and an opportunity to express ourselves as women. It's indeed an honor to be able to return to the college that you graduated from, to speak not only to the students, but also to be able to address those who for 4 years addressed you, to trade places from the lectern, I guess you'd say. The topic that I have been asked to speak on today is that of becoming a person. Now, to be sure, this is a vast subject, one in which I'm positive many of you could find enough material to write a book or to design a course to include in many different departments in a college such as a liberal arts school. To simplify matters, I have decided in thinking this over that the best way to approach this perhaps for today would be my own personal views on what it means to become a person and to draw for you some of the experiences I've had in my lifetime. First of all, I'd like to talk about this area of becoming a person in terms of you as an individual. Each one of us has, perhaps as the greatest job in our entire lives, that of becoming a real person. When I say this, I mean a person who knows who they are, who understands what their abilities are, their tolerances, their likes, their dislikes, academically, how well they can or cannot do, to understand where they fit in, so to speak. To become this means you must study diligently and hard. A college setting is a wonderful one in which you can test yourself. You can pit yourself against any course of your choosing and find out just how much aptitude you have for a particular area in science, music, or what have you. You can test yourself in terms of social development in the many offerings of school groups and clubs and activities. You can test your talents in music and art and drama or in sports. And it's a wonderful chance for you to find out where you fit in and how well you can develop your abilities. And I truly believe that a person should stretch themselves as much as they can to really make the most of what you are as a person and to discover what your individual personality is. Each one of us is a person in our own right, equipped with abilities and talents, imagination, creativity, intellectual ability, that no one else has the same characteristics as ours. They're not the same person. We're all different. We all look different. Well, this is a challenge. It's the greatest one you have to face in life. To know who you are, to find out, to use your experience in this college setting, not just to stuff your head with facts, to learn a great deal about many subjects. Because if you're conversant about one subject or many and have never really applied this knowledge to you, in my opinion, you haven't learned very much. When you leave this college setting, you'll find out that it was a rather cloistered existence in many ways. When you get into the outside world and must compete with people who perhaps aren't as ethical as you wish they would be, or haven't maybe even had the educational background that you've had, or maybe don't have any beliefs in a God or what have you, it's going to test you as a person. And this is when it's important that you have done your job in school in learning how to think. Solomon in the Bible prayed for wisdom. He didn't pray for knowledge of a great many things and of facts stuffed away in his mind. You can always find those in books. The important thing to learn in college is where to go to find what you want to know. But more importantly, how to use your mind so that you can take unrelated kinds of ideas and put them together, synthesize them into something that's sensible. so that you can look at the events that are going on in the world around you and can construct some kind of a meaning to them and not be dependent upon news sources or upon other people to interpret the world for you. It's important that you as a person can interpret what's going on, and it's vital. It's necessary. You must do it to live in this world that we're in. You must be able to think constructively, relate ideas, synthesize new ideas, to be able to understand the fine and intricate blend that exists between all bodies of knowledge. Not to have this idea, I'm going to be one thing, let's say a doctor. From the time you're 10 years old and you grow up to be a middle-aged person and you know nothing about other fields of study. You care nothing about what other people think or how they think or why. This is a very sterile way to approach the world you're in, and I hope each of one of you will take that world that's yours and make the most of it and learn something about everybody and everything you come in contact with. Emerson once said, "Every man is my master in some sense, and of that I will learn." He was a brilliant person, but more than this, he was brilliant in that he knew that other people were a great source of learning and understanding. When I was in the Miss Minnesota program, one of the former state presidents of the JCs did not have the kind of beliefs that I do in religion or in morality or in values or goals or ideals, however you want to term it. And I was hard put to find the words to express to this person what I felt. And it was a rather touchy situation until one day, about a week later, he called me on the phone and said, "I've never heard a young person who dared to stand up to me for what they believe like you did." And he said, "You hold on to those beliefs because, believe me, no one else in this world cares." This is what I mean by a cloistered existence. We're so used to having parents that care, teachers that care. Fortunately, in a small school such as this, teachers do care. They want you to succeed, and they help you in every way they can, perhaps more than they should. And then what do we do in return? If something goes wrong, we say it's the fault of our parents, it's the fault of our home. Don't kid yourself. It's your fault. You're the person who's responsible for what you think because, believe me, outside of those who love you, no one else really cares. No one else is going to go through the daily struggle of life, of finding out just how to approach this and that situation but you. You're the only one who's responsible for your life. And have the courage to accept it. Don't back off in a corner somewhere and say it's my parents' fault, I didn't have the right kind of upbringing, or this teacher wasn't fair to me. All you're doing is cheating yourself because you're lying to yourself that it's someone else's responsibility. It's not, it's yours. So what you are as a person depends on your own initiative to just eat up experiences. This is one experience in college. And after you get out, you'll have experiences in the working world and in traveling and in meeting people from all walks of life. What I think struck me as Miss Minnesota is that one day I could be in a convention with 4 or 5 governors and several heads of businesses in the state, be traveling all around. The next day I would be speaking to a group of 4th and 5th graders, or maybe in a very impoverished rural area in northern Minnesota, where people think so much differently than those you were with the day before, and it was up to you to find a common meeting ground, to be able to open up a topic of conversation and understand them. Love and understanding of other people goes a long way. Your proving ground, my second point, will be in terms of other people. This is where you find out how well you've done your job. It's like taking a test. You find out how well you've done your job when you walk in and take that test and you're graded with other people. There's a proving ground for you as a social person. How well you're able to control your own mentality, your own emotions, your stability, your ability to make decisions and to act. This is really the purpose of education, to be able to meet life situations. And you're tested in terms of how well you meet these situations. This is where you find out just how much you can do. I had no idea in the world 6 weeks before my college graduation I was in Miss Bloomington pageant, and had no idea in the world that I would ever be Miss Bloomington, let alone Miss Minnesota. But I worked and I pushed because it's something I'd never done before and didn't know I had ability to do that. And maybe I didn't, but I worked hard. This is how you find out who you are. And it's exciting because you discover a person inside of you that you didn't even know existed. And it opens up many marvelous doors, such as speaking to you today. And you realize that maybe you can influence someone else's life, hopefully for good. And this is what you should always be cognizant of. Being constructive in terms of other people. Because many times what you do is influencing them even without your knowledge. I don't want to be all idealism and no realism, because believe me, there are a lot of people that won't agree with you. In fact, they'll make it downright tough for you to achieve the things you think you should. And this is where it's important that you know what you've got to do and you do it. I recall when I was in the Miss America pageant, I had become very good friends with the Miss America just the year before I was in. And we had traveled to about 5 states together and being in pageants. Maria was a very intelligent girl and a very sensitive girl, and this year as Miss America had been extremely hard on her. In the final night of the Miss America pageant, she came to me and I thought, what a cruel thing to say. She told me, I hope you don't become Miss America. I would only wish that on an enemy, not on a friend. And she went on to say that within her first few weeks as Miss America, she worked so hard to discover what it was people really wanted in a Miss America. Now that is a tremendous burden to bear. To try and be an ideal of the American young womanhood in every respect. Every moment of the day, regardless of who you're with or how tired or hungry you are. To always be on your toes and to be just right. And she said, I worked so hard and tried to discover what people wanted and was so sensitive to what they said and kept trying to adjust myself to this thing. She'd been was scheduled for a parade in a town, and it was a large parade, and she was on a big float, but it wasn't high enough for her not to hear one man comment to his wife, you mean that's Miss America? Remember, people, that many times those who criticize us the most severely have no knowledge of what we're doing. They've never been a Miss America. They don't know the strains of being in that position. They've never been a college student. They don't know the strains of being a college student. Those who understand you the best are the ones who have had experience in that line. They know what you're going through and will be much more tolerant. This is why professors many times are so tolerant of their students, because they know what the struggle of an academic life is. But there are those who don't understand and who will make it definitely difficult for you. So be prepared in this sense that you know well enough who you are that you're not going to buckle under at the first wind. You're going to stand up for who you are as a person and do those things you know you must do, and do them with courage and determination. And out of selflessness. The third point I'd like to make is that in this business of being a person may be the most significant aspect of you as a person. What will mold you more than any other thing is your spiritual belief. When I was in West Berlin, our hotel room overlooked the Kaiser Wilhelm Church, what had been the Kaiser Wilhelm, a beautiful, beautiful Gothic structure at one time that had been completely bombed out and had been replaced on either side by what is now called the Powder Puff and the Lipstick, two new architecturally modern buildings. The only portion of this church that had been left enough intact to keep as a war memorial was the narthex. And strangely enough, through all this bombing, in the center of this church, where the altar was a beautiful marble statue of the Christ. This church housed many statues, all of which were completely destroyed. They couldn't save any of them, and this statue of the Christ was left totally intact. Not even an arm or a foot or anything had been injured on this statue. And these people were so overwhelmed, the members of this Christian congregation, that they left this narthex intact and placed in it, at the center of the narthex, for all to see this statue of the Christ as a living symbol of their faith. This hadn't been there very long until a group of young rebels against the Christian faith and its belief raided that narthex one night, which was always open to the public, and painted this statue red from top to bottom. They hated what it stood for in the church that was there. And when I looked at that, I almost cried, because it was coming through the narthex. It was dark. What little light could come in was artificial or from the outside, and you could see the statue, but you couldn't see it in the darkness, that it was red, and when you got up to it, it was painted bright red. To be sure, it looked rather grotesque, and yet beautiful. And I felt this at that time and still do. People will try to destroy what you believe as a Christian. They'll destroy from the outside, like the painting of this statue. But they'll also try to destroy from the inside, through little innuendos, invitations to immorality, I call them. Just a little bit here and a little bit there, inviting you to leave what you believe and to find this more fun way of living. It'll happen to you if it hasn't already, many, many, many times. And you have to have your eyes wide open so you know when it is and you know what's happening to you, so that you just don't gradually move away from what you believe and towards something else that isn't good. Hang on to that Christian faith of yours. It'll make a bigger person of you. It'll release the power you have as a person to love others and to do something with your life that's worthwhile. And this really is a purpose that we all have. In closing, I'd like to use a poem. When I worked for the State Department of Education, it was for people who were handicapped in one way or another. And I think this poem became very significant. It was anonymously written, but I was able to find out through some research that the person who wrote it was a paraplegic. In other words, a man who was paralyzed from the waist down. He had been a brilliant student and had a wonderful life ahead of him from the appearance of things, and was denied the right of his limbs in a car accident. And for many months he was mourning his loss, unable to do anything with himself, not knowing, where do I go now, what do I do? And this is what he wrote, and I think it's so meaningful in this light. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything I had hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered, and I am among all men most richly blessed.